everyone, Angela here. Life can be challenging. Trust me, I get it. However, I have learned we can either view the opposition or value the opportunity. Ponder on the problem or praise the potential. Focus on the situation or find the solution. Despite the current circumstances you're going through, I invite you to join me today as we embark on a grand adventure to discover the reasons why it's a good time to be you.
Here's the encourager herself, making every day a good day, Angela Henderson.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. And we are so glad you are here today. Thank you for being with us. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's a good time to be you. Yes, and it is. Thank you for being with us. We have an amazing show for you today. It is amazing how God has designed us. You know, when He created Adam and Eve, He told them, be fruitful, take dominion of this earth, multiply. And so it's only natural that we would want to reproduce, that we would want to have children, that we could build a legacy, have a heritage, leave something for the future. However, sometimes it can be so disheartening when we are told that we cannot do that. And so we have with us today a very special lady. She happens to be our producer here at It's a Good Time to Be You, Michelle P. Warren, who is going to share with us her story. When at a very young age, she was told that she would not be able to bear children and that she had many fibroid cysts. And so naturally, this was disheartening for her. But we're going to discover how faithful our God was in her life. So don't go away. We'll be right back after these messages. Hey, as a leader, you are a broker of gifts. So whether you are a professional, a business owner, or a ministerial leader, I would love to accompany you in transforming your ordinary staff into an extraordinary team through leadership development, team building, and personal discovery. You will learn the amazing gifts, skills, and talents that each of you have and know how to bring them together in order to do great things. So reach out to me at angeladhenderson.com and let's begin your amazing adventure today. And remember, it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. We're so glad you're here today. Now let's give a warm welcome for our friend and producer, Michelle P. Warren. Michelle, come on out here. Welcome, welcome. You're always here with us.
Always here.
That's right. Come on, have a seat. Well, thank you. Thank you for kind of transitioning from there to here.
Yeah.
But your story is so amazing, and we knew that it would definitely bring a lot of hope and a lot of encouragement to our audience and to our viewers, because it's on a sensitive subject, you know, about childbearing and how important that is to us as human beings to be able to reproduce and contribute to the next generation.
Right.
And so just kind of share with us, give us a little bit about your background. I'm sure our audience and viewers would be happy to get to know you a little bit better and know the woman behind the scenes that kind of helps make all this happen.
Thank you, Angela. So I grew up in Northern Virginia. I was born in Germany. My father's military.
Okay.
And Virginia's pretty much home. I lived in Fayetteville for a short amount of time, but I spent all of my formative years there. I went to college at Virginia Commonwealth in Richmond.
Okay.
And my father became a minister when I was about 13 or 14. That was interesting.
You know,
of
you
a
sound
transition.
a lot like me. We have a lot in common. My father was military turned pastor as well.
Yeah.
So I know how that is.
So the household got really strict. All of a sudden, all of my Biggie CDs and all of my Tupac albums and things were getting crunched and thrown out the door. I was already in a state of rebellion, just being a teenager. But I knew from an early age, one of the things that I knew for sure was I wanted to have children. And I don't know, other than God now, I see that that was planted by Him.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I realized was I wanted to be a mom more than anything. And I want to say at like 9 or 10, I always felt like that. And then also, I told my mother one day in the kitchen, I was 12 years old, mind you.
Wow.
And told her, I said, Mom, I think I'll be a mother before I'm a wife. Talk about a gasp.
Yeah, like what was the reaction of that pastor's mind?
My mother was standing at the kitchen, at the stove, and she said, why would you say a thing like that? Like, why would you say that? She's like, absolutely not. You know, I'm 12, so she's already having questions like, what is she doing? Like, what's going on? But it was something just deeply planted in me that I just felt like that would be the course of my life. And I knew it was not acceptable per se, but I just knew the desire for children was so much stronger than even being a wife. And so it was a difficult time hearing that my womb or that my body was not conducive for that environment for a child to grow and be born.
Now, at what age were you when that discovery was made?
It was between like 14 and 15. So I want to say I went to the doctor. I was having irregular cycles, all of those normal things. And I was struggling a lot, up and down weight loss, gain, and everything. I was still at a healthy weight, but it was just always fluctuating. I always had issues, had to stay home from school, stuff like that. Very painful. And I'd have cysts that rupture that would put me in the hospital because they were toxic. So I'd end up like having like almost like an infection. And so when they told me that, they were like, you have a extreme case of PCOS. You also have a very volatile uterus, is what they called it. And they said, well, childbearing is probably not in your future.
So it wasn't conducive.
It was not conducive.
So, God just really kind of set you up for, His name to be made famous and to be glorified, in your life and in your situation when you weren't born with the ability, to be able to do that, and your body was already programmed, not to go into that. But the age of 12, 12 represents the number of ruling and reigning in government. And so even at that age, I think that you operated in a prophetic mode about you. You already embraced the idea of motherhood. And I think even more so in the spiritual as well as in the natural, and even maybe at that time, not fully understanding the word that you were receiving and that was being delivered to you, even though, as we will continue with your story, there was more truth to that than said. So let's not go anywhere, all right? We are going to a commercial break, but you stay right there because we're going to continue to hear the rest of Michelle's story and to just see how God was faithful in doing what the doctor said could not be done. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Angela here. Just wanting to invite you to share your story with us. We all have times in our lives when it just seemed like it was impossible. But then there was that moment of breakthrough. And just maybe your story was meant to be shared and imparted to be able to encourage and uplift others. Well, we would love to be able to give you that opportunity. So how about send your story into us at itsagoodtimetobeYou@gmail.com for consideration. We would love the opportunity to be able to bring you up on stage so that you can do what you were designed to do, and that was to be an encouragement to those around you. Sometimes you just can't make this stuff up, but when it happens, we want the world to know about it. So again, reach out to us at itsagoodtimetobeYou@gmail.com and send in that story for us to consider. And remember, it's a good time to be you.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. We have a very special guest, our own producer, Michelle P. Warren, who is just sharing with us her story behind the miracle that God had provided in her life when it comes to childbearing. We left off where the doctors had told you that just wasn't going to happen. Don't even plan on it. Other women can have children, but you can't.
That's right.
And I'm sure that the enemy just really plagued your mind, especially expressing such a desire at a young age of 12, where you had kind of prophetically, maybe without realizing that's what you were doing, you had prophesied into your future, even before you realized that physically that was impossible for you. You didn't know that. But you had already spoken into existence. So when you received this bad news, this devastating news, how did you react or respond to that? What happened to Michelle?
Oh, what happened to Michelle? Yeah. Okay. Well, I just kind of went off the beaten path. I was, like I said, I was already kind of in a state of rebellion when it came to that part of it and being active. I'll say being sexually active. I became careless a little bit. I felt like, well, there's no point in me worrying about it. It's not an option. And so I was with my longtime boyfriend of almost 4 years. I was in college. And I found out my senior year of school that my father was graciously paying for out of his pocket, that I was then pregnant.
Wow.
And I was in complete and total disbelief.
Yes.
And my first thought was, I won't carry to term. So, like, this is just, I already have a volatile situation. This is what popped up on a test, but this is probably not really going to happen. But the interesting thing, if I back up a little bit, is right after receiving the news, I wrote myself a letter and I named my children. And I wrote it out and said, like, I'm going to have a son. I'm going to have a daughter first, and then I'm going to have a son. And I wrote it on a piece of paper and I put it in, I used to keep like notes and things in a Reebok shoebox. And so I wrote it and I put it in that box and I never looked at it again. But I just remember writing that down and naming them first, middle, and last name and saying that this is what's going to happen. But when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't believe that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So again, that was like a second prophetic moment in my life where I wrote that down. But then years later, when it actually came to pass, I didn't even think twice about it. It's not until later in life that I realized, wow, something in me knew.
Gosh.
Yeah.
How ironic, or we know that this was God trying to get your attention, to let you know, Michelle, I'm still with you.
Yeah.
And Michelle, we need to kind of get focused in life a little bit and don't rebel against me, because I do have great plans for you. And, many times we might think, oh, well, that was just the judgment of God, or, you got what you deserved,
Exactly.
or, whatever. But life is valuable. Life is precious. And we can see this as God being gracious, even in the midst of when maybe our hearts were in rebellion at times. God's mercy showed up to help get us back focused again and get us back into an alignment with His will and His heart and draw us back, to Him and His plan for our lives. And so when you found out that you were pregnant, did you, in fact, actually carry this baby to full term?
I sure did. I carried her to term with not one complication.
Not one
Not
complication.
one complication. She was perfectly healthy.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a girl first.
And it was a girl.
And I named her exactly what I wrote on the piece of paper. So
Oh
I
my
gave birth to Nadia
gosh.
Simone Miller on
Nadia
March 10th of
Simone.
2005.
Wow. And at the time that you found out you were pregnant, what was your age?
I was 19.
19. And 19 represents faith, truth, and hearing. And so, again, I do believe that it was God just trying to get your attention. Something that you wrote on a piece of paper that you just shoved in a shoebox somewhere. He was speaking to you. And you said she was born in what date?
March 10th.
March 10th. Well, March represents a time of war. I'm sure she's a fighter.
Yeah.
And
Boy.
and the 10th represents, get this, 10 represents law and order. And so we can see how God was trying to restore order in your life, at a time when you just threw everything to the side, no caution to the wind, who cares?
Yeah.
My dreams have been diminished, because this is what I wanted. But God was showing you, Michelle, I'm still with you. I'm in your life. Let's get focused. And He brought some order into your lives through the great miracle of life.
Yeah.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So what happened after, her birth?
Well, after that, I actually got my life together. It was the time in my life where I found out that I could persevere.
Yes.
Through adversity. I finished school. I walked across the stage. I did not drop out at any point.
Yay.
And I walked across the stage. My parents have the picture to this day where I went right off the stage in the beeline straight to her carrier, and I picked her up and told her we did it. She was about 8 or 9 weeks old at the time. And that was the hardest circumstances I've ever had, like up to that point, was going to school, pushing a baby carrier to class, having to walk out when she cried, having to excuse myself from professors, from testing dates because she needed to be fed, just whatever that was. It was a great challenge, and all of my professors told me to drop out. And so I'm a fighter. I was born in March as well. I was born March 18th, so I am a fighter. And so when people tell me I can't, that pushes me a little bit.
Yeah.
So I got it together. I cleaned up my friendship circle. I got rid of some friends. Yeah. We were drinking, just doing things as college kids, and I had to clean all that up because now I had a daughter.
Yeah, great responsibility. And it's beautiful how you shared 8 or 9 weeks old, because 8 represents new birth and new covenant, and 9 represents to finish and accomplish.
Yeah.
And so through that new birth,
Yeah.
God made a new covenant with you, and you finished and accomplished something very special, which was your getting your degree.
Yes.
So that's great. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back, because there's more to this story, and you don't want to miss it. So I'm telling you, the doctors were so wrong. So we'll see you back in just a moment. Check out my new book on AngelaDHenderson.com and take a journey to discover the many reasons why it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everybody. So we're with our producer, Michelle P. Warren, and she is just sharing with us the miraculous work of God in her life, and just overriding what the doctors said, where they said that she would never be able to have children. So, Michelle, we've already proven the doctors wrong in the testimony that you just shared of how God miraculously allowed you to give birth to a beautiful baby girl. But now let's move up into today's time. You have a total of 4 kids. So, I mean, like, the doctors were really, really wrong, and God really outdid himself and gave you 4 times what the doctor said you were never going to have. So, what happened? How'd that take place?
Well,
I mean, I know about the birds and the bees, but I'm just
right.
Yeah, I mean, like, what happened here?
Well, oddly enough, I gave birth to my daughter, cleaned my life up. We kind of do things in our own strength. So I was like, to the letter, and then I backslid, I kind of went back into this place, some circumstances and things happened, and then I found out I was pregnant with my son 6 years later. And
it's almost like God is saying, hello, Michelle.
Like, Michelle, how many times you have to go down that path?
Michelle.
So I was like, oh man, because I had spent 5 years being celibate. Yeah. And so then I had like this mix up and slip up and got pregnant right away. On that one occasion, just got pregnant, and I was like, oh man, like, how did I become so fertile all of a sudden? Like, this is like crazy. And so I gave birth to my son. I had a few complications at the end of his pregnancy, but again, born perfectly healthy. Wow. I had some elevated like lung pressures and things of that, so I ended up being on bed rest and stuff just for the last 3 or 4 weeks. But then we move into the next child, and none of these children, so here's the thing, none of the children were planned. Yeah. Like I don't, I've always wanted to be that woman that had like the reveal and I'm pregnant and for everybody to be happy, about it. But every time I had a child, it was like, oh my gosh. Like, what's going on? Like, this is not healthy. Like, this is not good. So it was never like we didn't do the little bath bombs and break the colors and gender reveals or any of that stuff. I never had, none of my children, even with my husband, were not planned. Yes. And so we get to Eden. I had I just recently got married, lost my job shortly after. And then after losing the job, found out I was pregnant during that.
Oh, wow.
And
that sometimes can be devastating, because you're thinking, how am I going to pay for this?
Exactly. My COBRA period was up. Yeah. I had no health insurance. I had nothing. And me and my husband were kind of switching roles, because I was the breadwinner at the time, and then he had to like start taking over, got multiple jobs. And I was going to the doctor to actually get treatment on a back issue, because I had been in some car accidents in between these years. And so I was getting my back treated finally by a great doctor. And I went into that doctor's appointment after finding out I was pregnant. And then I sat down to talk to him. And then when I stood up, I was bleeding in the chair. And he was like, whoa, what's going on? And I said, well, I actually was coming today to tell you I'm pregnant, so we have to stop the injections and stuff like that. But then I saw that I was miscarrying. So I thought. I thought. So I ended up finding out that I went to the ER. It was right next door to my doctor's office. And they said, there's no way this child will survive. You're hemorrhaging, the placenta has torn, and you have a fibroid mass that's in there with the baby. And I was like, okay. So they said, you're going to naturally abort. I was actually relieved. Wow. I was relieved, because I was like, I cannot bring a child into this situation right now. I'm newly married. I don't even know married life yet. Like, there's too much going on. And so we went home and we just waited. Well, 3 months went by. I was still hemorrhaging. I was going back and forth, but I couldn't afford doctor's appointments. So I was just still waiting for this to be over. And I went back in January of the following year, so this happened in the fall. I went back in. They do another ultrasound at the ER, and they said, Miss Warren, you're still pregnant. Wow. And I said, well, what do we do now? you know, and
Yes.
they were just like, you gotta wait. She can't survive this. You're like 80% infused with blood. Like, there's just no way that the uterus can tolerate. Well, fast forward, she's here. She is
Oh,
now
hallelujah.
7. She is now 7 years old, and she is nothing but a fighter as well.
Oh my
She
goodness.
is
7 years old.
She's
Perfection
7 years.
of God.
That's right. She grew in utero with the fibroid. And every ultrasound, she was laying on top of the fibroid, sucking her thumb, and she was encapsulated by blood. And the revelation that I got from that is that I'm covered by the blood of Jesus Christ, and that she is too, and that she has great promise on her life. There was just no doctor could fathom that she would be born without a complication. She was spot on healthy, passed every test, and ended up having to have a C-section. But other than that, at that point, they did say, Michelle, no more children.
Yeah.
Because I developed a cardiomyopathy. So now my heart was failing because I was hemorrhaging for 9 months.
Wow.
And so after I gave the emergency C-section me, and then they said, no more kids after this. And
Okay. All right. So, my goodness. All right. There's no question that these children were not meant to be in this world, and that they have great purpose, and that God has given them a great mother to help them live that purpose. But as we know, and we've already told you, there's 4. So there's more to this story. So do not go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So we just gave birth to child number 3. All right, but there are 4 to this. And, Michelle, it's just amazing, what God was doing in your life in these moments. Your first child, number 1, represents getting focused and setting your mind straight. Number 2 represents a witness. And again, you becoming a witness of what God was doing, in your life. Number 3 represents divine unity and purpose, of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, getting into an alignment. And again, even when doctors said it's not going to happen, and even when the physical body was trying to reject, the will of the Father was that no, Eden needs to be here. We have purpose, and there's a plan beyond the womb. Many babies do not make it outside of the womb alive, but I believe that their purpose still yet in those moments was served.
That's right.
But there was more out beyond the womb, for your babies. And so now we're at number 4. Number 4 represents being productive and of the earth. And so walk us through that. What was going on? Again, you told us you were a warrior and that you were a fighter. And if somebody says you ain't going to do it, you say, oh, I am. So anyway, so tell us what went on here.
Yeah, so after Eden, I had multiple surgeries. I had a lot of hospitalizations, blood transfusions. I ran the gamut. I was in and out of the hospital for the first 6 weeks of her life.
Wow.
And therefore, I couldn't bond with her the way I wanted to. But we did everything possible. The doctors told me if I had another child, my morbidity rate would be over 20%, and that's a risk not worth taking. So they recommended a uterine artery embolization. Okay. And so I went and had my uterine arteries that feed the womb cut off basically with radioactive material. And so it was supposed to like ablaze the arteries and keep blood flow from happening. After that, I no longer had a cycle. I was, at this point I lived in South Carolina, went to MUSC. They told me, you're not going to have a cycle. The chances of having a child after a uterine artery embolization has not happened. Like, they don't have medical evidence of that being successful. Okay. You can conceive, but you can't carry full term. And so I said, okay, all right, so we're done having kids. God has blessed me with 3. I'm going to be content with that, and that's fine. Well, one night I had a dream.
Uh-oh.
And the
prophet has a dream.
The Lord spoke to me clear as day and said, you will bear a child. And I just woke up and acted like Sarah, and I laughed. And it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, Lord, you're funny. Like, that's not even possible. It's been a year and a half, like 2 years almost. And so I went back to sleep, and he said it again. And I woke up, and I was like, no way. And so then I tested him, and I went and got pregnancy test the next day. And I said, Lord, if this is you, and if I conceived, this had to have happened recently because my husband was away mourning his mom. So I was like, this had to have happened recently. And if I'm truly pregnant, let this test be pregnant, because I know it's too early to tell. We all know about 6 weeks you take a pregnancy test. Well, I took 4 of them, and all of them were pink that day.
Oh my goodness.
All of them were solid pink. I called my best friend. She just said, Lord, when the Lord tells you something, it's the truth, you know, and now he's speaking to you directly. Like, you were stubborn back in the day, but now he's coming right to you. And so I was thinking immediately, this is not healthy. This is not going to be good for me. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I went to the doctors, and they actually told me I wasn't pregnant.
Right.
So then I started getting blood work every 2 days, and they were like, nope, you're not pregnant. Nope, you're not pregnant. And I was like, yes, I am. And so they ended up recommending me for a psychological eval, because they thought that I was having like a mental crisis about not being able to have a baby after having the embolization and stuff like that. So they did not take it seriously. I had no prenatal care. And they did not believe for a full 10 weeks that I was with child. So.
And so at 10 weeks?
At 10 weeks, I got a second opinion. I went down to MUSC one day. A good friend, it's always good to have witnesses and people around you that are faith-filled as well, because after week, I was crying at the doctor's office, standing outside saying, I think I'm going crazy. So, they ended up telling me to get a second opinion. I went to MUSC, told them what happened, and told them I believed God. And they said, we believe with you. And they did an ultrasound, and there she was.
Wow. And this is 10 weeks, guys. And so the number 10 represents law and order. So once again, God he was faithful. Whatever he says,
That's
it will
right.
be. And he established the order. And so you have your baby girl. Now, when you look at the names of your kids, and you went back to that piece of paper that you wrote down some names on, and the number of kids on, and you stuffed it in a shoebox, what were the names?
So the names were Nadia Simone Miller, Jaden Mikkel Miller, Eden Latoy Warren, and Paris Brielle Warren. And so I didn't have the names of the younger 2 on that paper because I wasn't married yet, and I didn't know. But for the first 2, I definitely, many years later, went back and saw that and was like, oh my goodness, he was faithful the whole time.
The whole time.
The whole
What
time.
God says he will do. So
That's
be
right.
encouraged today. If God has promised you something,
That's
know that there is no rule or law of man that they can say that'll be contrary to what God says. God is going to do exactly what he says. So put your hope and your trust in God. So Michelle, when did you realize it was a good time to be you?
I realized it was a good time to be me when I sit in my house now and look at those 4 children that didn't exist at one point in time, and they are here purely by the grace of God. And that his love for me was so great that he met a desire that I had in my heart, and I just had to wait on him. And so every day I look at my children, I know it's a good day to be me.
Yes, ma'am. Awesome. Well, why don't we tell our friends and our viewers out there at the count of 3 that it's a good time to be you.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. It's a good time to be you.
Hey everyone, to connect with Michelle P. Warren, just go to www.michellepwarren.com. And remember, it's a good time to be you.